This episode of The Mandalorian was called The Spies. We'll talk about it in Pooey. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and in this episode there are a number of things that go on, and there are a number of things that thankfully do not require you to know everything about Star Wars. However, if you do, there are a number of informative things. We see Moff Gideon for the first time this season, and he has a Vader-esque outfit now, and he is putting together the Shadow Council. The Shadow Council appears to be a number of people that you would recognize from other Star Wars properties or related to people from other Star Wars properties that we will not go into with any depth right here. What is interesting is that their aim is to bring back the Empire. This is kind of the beginnings of what they will later call the First Order. And this was something I never really understood clearly in the second trilogy of films. You know, we finally beat the Empire, so who are we fighting now? We're supposedly the government, and we're fighting the First Order, whatever that is. And apparently what the First Order is, from what they've explained during this series, is that it is a group of essentially counter-revolutionaries that are trying to compromise the New Republic to be more like the Empire, and that's what then the rebels in the last trilogy are fighting. So with that, we have kind of the beginnings of that, and there is kind of a power struggle between Gideon and Admiral Thrawn, which will be used in some other previously produced property of the future time from what this goes on. Once again, not going there. We also know that the Mandalorians are now fairly united under Bo-Katan now that she wields the Darksaber. So the Night Owls and the Children of the Watch are now in a, not what I would say a firm coalition, but certainly one that has a certain respect for the other. And they, with the newly reclaimed fleet, Bo-Katan leads them to retake Mandalore. And the first thing that they want to do is find where the ancient forge is. So they set out a landing party, basically. They take one of the smaller ships down, and they are able to find where the forge was, but it doesn't come without its plot twist. Meantime, what we have going on Navarro is that Grogu and Din Djarin visit with Greef Karga, the Grand Magistrate Greef Karga, who presents them happily with a rebuilt IG-11, which is now IG-12. It has all of its logic circuits taken out, and it is basically just a mech suit now, and it has been outfitted for Grogu to pilot. Now, Din is against this to begin with. He says, no, Grogu is too young to deal with this kind of stuff. However, he force jumps into it and is immediately walking it around the room, knocking a couple of things over, but certainly loving it and finding that he has yes and no buttons, and he's constantly hitting the yes button as he's walking around the room. Yes, 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 yes. And it's very entertaining. It's a nice bit of comic relief to an otherwise very intense episode. And there's a lot that happens here. A lot of people that have been complaining about where is the plot being advanced. I think you'll find it more here as they return to Mandalore, and they find even more Mandalorians who had survived from the initial attacks. They had stayed, and they are coming up in a land ship. It looks something like something out of Mad Max. And there's even a crow's nest where the one of the guys, whoever's acting as the captain is, or the lookout or whatever. But they have this whole imposing entrance in, and they find that these people are not threats to them, but rather they need food. And so our new alliance under Bo-Katan says, "We have food," and they align with them, and they get on their ship, and they head to where the ancient forge is expected to be. Now, as I said earlier, there's a twist in this, and of course, Moff Gideon has set it up as a trap. His spy, and perhaps that's where the spies are giving the title to this, were telling him where they were going to be, and he was there ready with all kinds of stormtroopers and other things. Also showed with pride his new Vader-esque outfit, which is made out of Beskar, which makes him fairly invulnerable. Needless to say, though, he leaves before the big fighting starts. And there is a great deal of chivalry at this, and we know at the end that we have our hero waiting to see what happens to him next, and of course how he's going to be rescued by the rest. It's all going to lead up to a pretty big conclusion. Interesting touch when they're coming into Navarro. They have a mythosaur painted on the bottom of the light cruiser, which is the bigger ship in their armada. They also have another scene where Grogu doesn't seem to have any respect for anybody else's personal property as he uses the IG-11's articulators to be able to pick fruit out of a fruit stand and start just gorging on whatever kind of fruit is there. Thankfully, Mando is not far from him in order to pay the merchant for what Grogu has just grabbed up and taken. There's some concern as to whether he is going to be controllable in this suit, and yet he did break up a fight during a clash in a board game between one of the Children of the Watch and one of the Night Owls. So there is a little bit of friction that they show there, but they still seem to be a fairly united front, and especially after meeting against Moff Gideon, I imagine that they're going to come back in force in the next episode. So, what do you think? Has Mando kind of left their original idea too far behind, where it's the lone gunman and his sidekick that go into town to help out whoever needs to be helped out and moves on to the next town, and now it's a big ensemble of different characters that have too many names for me to be able to review? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're there, go ahead and subscribe if you've not done so before, and like, please. So, until next time when we talk about the amazing conclusion to this season of The Mandalorian, don't go far.